Welcome to Chatsunami. Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Chatsunami. I'm Satsunami, and joining me in this journey to hell to fight all these demons is... Oh, hold on, I'm getting a call. What do you mean we can't call them that? Well, that's literally... Fine, okay. Joining me today to go to Mars to fight off the infected is Adam. Adam, welcome. Do you want to talk about the infected on Mars?
Those damn Mars infected. How I loathe them.
Yeah, spoiling our intros.
Ruining everything as they always do.
This is why I didn't get on that shuttle to Mars.
They should go back to that place that's often very fiery and got a big red man there.
Oh, you mean London?
Yeah.
Humour. Anyway, how you doing?
I'm not too bad, thanks. Good to be back as always, as we speed towards the big 100 as like a runaway train.
I can't believe this. I was saying this to you before we started recording, but yeah, this is the penultimate episode of Season 2, and it's amazing to think we've just blasted through so many episodes.
I know, it literally just seems like a couple of weeks back that we started Season 2, and I'm like, wow, like 49 episodes have gone in between.
Yeah, because the first episode was... It was the Cornetto trilogy, wasn't it?
My God, that seems so recent but so long ago.
It honestly is. Like, time flies when you're having fun. So yeah, I thought we were having far too much fun, and I decided to really humble ourselves by watching the 2005 flick Doom.
Crashing down to Earth.
Or Mars.
Or Mars, true. Good point.
As they keep emphasising in this damn film. Before we jump into this episode, I have a very important question for you. What is your relationship with the Doom franchise? Because as we know, Doom is a very beloved and popular video game series that I think the last game came out in 2018, I want to say. 2020? What?
Early 2020, I think just before the pandemic, if memory serves.
So it did, because it came out at the exact same time as Animal Crossing.
If you remember all those, you remember all the Doom Slayer Isabel.
Yeah. Nothing says wholesome family entertainment than Isabel yelling into the depths of hell, rip and tear, you know.
Well, it was a simpler time 2 years ago.
It was a different time, okay. Well, Doom Guy actually wore his helmet, he wore his mask, so you gotta give him props for that, even in hell. He was socially distancing.
Well, that's true.
Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. He was socially distancing demons from their own torsos, but that's another thing.
No, I've played every mainline Doom game, which I think they've only really had mainline games. I don't think there's been any kind of spin-offs, but no, I've played them all. I mean, my first Doom game was Doom 3, which I played a couple years after it was released. I think like 2008 or something is when I played it. And then later on, probably nearly a decade later, I kind of got into the older ones like Doom 1 and Doom 2, and then, you know, the more recent entries, as we say, like 2016 Doom and then Doom Eternal. So yeah, no, like I've played all the games. I really like the vast majority of Doom games. Yeah, I really like it as a franchise. What about yourself?
Doom is one of these franchises that I knew of, a bit like Duke Nukem, but I wasn't really allowed to play those kind of games when I was a kid. You know what it's like when you were younger and you saw other people in school playing GTA or Duke Nukem, for example, and you wanted to play those kind of games? Well, before you knew, like, Duke Nukem was a hot mess. But anyway, sorry, that's another episode for another time.
Please don't make me do a Duke Nukem episode.
Oh, don't worry, I'll leave that for the fans. If you dial in now, you too can get...
No, I'm going to do a Duke Nukem episode, I know it.
That's the first episode of Season 3. We're doing a Duke Nukem month. You know?
Wicked, baby.
Blow it out your ass. Although, actually, fun story about that. I always remember I went into my brother's room one day when he was playing the N64, and he had a copy of... I think it was Duke Nukem 64, was that right?
Yeah, it was like the 64 version of the Duke Nukem 3D, I think.
And I remember him playing it. Looking back on it now, you know, the graphics are all pixelated, and it's not as graphic as like games today. Like, for example, Doom 2016, Doom Eternal is nothing compared to that. But I always remember walking in the room and watching him play, you know, as brothers do, younger brothers looking at their older brothers being like, oh, we're playing this game, which I still blame him for getting me into Sonic. But yeah, I remember my mum mum came in just as he was playing it, and she went ballistic. She was like, "What are you doing? You're showing your little brother this violent video game." You honestly can't imagine it nowadays, kids seeing that compared to something like Mortal Kombat or
A Grand Theft Auto game, as you say.
exactly. Yeah, I wasn't really allowed to play those kind of games. I knew of them, I never really got into them. I think the first time I actually ever played a Doom game was when I came to visit you one day, and you were having a game day with a couple of friends, and we played I think it was the Doom multiplayer.
Oh, yeah, for the first game.
Yeah.
I somehow picked a map that had no guns on it. Nobody could find anything. Don't know how I did that, but anyway.
It's like GoldenEye all over again. Yeah.
It was. Slappers only.
I had never played a Doom game before that. And then the first time I properly went away and played it by myself was when I got into streaming, and I played Doom 2016. I think I played it because I just reached affiliate at the time. I can't remember why, but there was a reason why I played it. It was like a kind of celebration stream. I like it well enough, but that's a story for another day. So my attachment to the series, other than seeing the odds advert for something like Doom 3 and the kind of creepy imagery for that, I'm not really attached to this series as much as yourself or other fans of the franchise. So when I ended up watching this film, I was a little bit detached. I knew some of the references, like the BFG, some of the monsters that come into it, but yeah, other than that, I didn't really know much about it. What were your first impressions of this film?
So I first saw this film, oh god, a long time, probably over 10 years ago now. I first saw this film. I used to have a DVD copy of it, so I definitely didn't see it when it came out, but I must have seen it maybe late 2000s. I want to say maybe about the time that I played Doom 3 was maybe the time that I picked up the copy of it. And to be honest, I liked this film well enough. It was one that I would rewatch occasionally. It's not something I'd have on repeat, but I would probably watch it more than some other things. I kind of liked it for what it was, but then again, I wasn't particularly a huge fan of the Doom franchise at that point. I liked it for some of the action. I liked it because it had The Rock in it, and I liked action films, so it kind of fit the bill there. And then I didn't watch it though for a long time. This was the first time I've watched it in maybe 10 years, maybe. Yeah, actually probably more than 10 years actually, just over. So it was interesting to go back to it, something that I've not watched in so long.
I'm actually trying to think of when I watched this film for the first time, because there was a period of time where I started watching really bad sci-fi films. Usually it was just to have kind of background noise when I was painting or doing something like that. It might have been one of those times I watched it. I remember I went to visit our mutual friend Craigie C, who used to run a bad movie night. Were you there that night? We watched him.
No, I wasn't, because I was excited to see it again, but I don't think I could make that one, so I missed out, unfortunately.
Because I remember we watched it, and it just came across as being quite boring. Because usually the sign of a good bad film is one you can riff on, you can talk about, and you can actually get some content and emotion out of. But for Doom, it just kind of felt as if it was oh god, here we go again, the same things over and over again. It was just a boring experience. Not the worst we've ever been through, but certainly not a great one. But you know what? I think that we have been holding this. What's the portal called? Is it the Ark
The
or
Ark.
something? I was going to say, we've been on standby to the Ark for a good while now, so will we just jump into this big CGI bubble?
I really don't. It looks like the worst way to travel ever, but if we must, let's do it.
Okay, so as we travel through the Ark and hope that our backsides don't go to Uranus, we go
Wow.
top quality humour on Chatsunami.
I can't argue with that. It works on so many levels.
Before we go into, the ad break and everything, can I just say, there is actually a character that happens to, but they don't make that joke. I'm come on, if you're going to commit to the silliness of this, just say his ass went to Uranus. Anyway, I'm going to move on before we get cancelled. So yeah, let's jump into the Ark, and we will see you on Mars. Welcome to Chatsunami, a variety podcast that talks about topics from gaming and films to streaming and general interests.
Previously on Chatsunami, we discussed Game of the Decade, Deadly Premonition, the romantic thriller Birdemic, and listen to us get all sappy as we discuss our top 5 Christmas films.
If that sounds like your cup of tea, then you can find us on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, and all good podcast apps. As always, stay safe,
Stay awesome, and most importantly,
stay hydrated.
We are Beer and Chill Podcast.
Podcast where we review TV shows, games, movies, and whatever else takes our fancy.
So what are you waiting for? If you're a cool kid like us, you're gonna listen to the Beer and Chill Podcast. You can get it anywhere from Spotify all the way to your grandmother's radio. My name is Jan.
And I'm Craigie C.
And we are
Beer and Chill. At a distant research facility, the final 10% of the human genome has just been discovered. And with it, all hell has broken loose.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, never get used to that.
Oh, dearie me. I like to have my sick bag on standby.
Is that not just a sandwich bag?
Oh no, my lunch.
Let's jump into Doom 2005. I'm saying that because when I say Doom, people will be like, what, you mean the first game? You mean 2016? You mean Doom Eternal? No, no such luck. If you came on this episode thinking, oh, we're going to be talking about a good Doom game, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that you had to listen to this. But now that you're here, why don't you make a cup of tea and suffer with us? So, Adam, best part of the episode, would you like to summarise this film?
Oh god. So the plot of Doom takes place in, oh my god, is it like 2145? I was looking at stuff about Doom 3 as well, so I'm worried I've got my timelines mixed up now. But let's say 2145. So the distant future. But anyway, in the future, on the planet of Mars is an archaeological dig site run by a large corporation called the UAC, United Aerospace Corporation. And as the film starts, we see that things have gone quite badly at this dig site, and some of the scientists are getting picked off, and one of them makes a desperate attempt to call for help before he's struck down. So we then cut over to this elite military unit, which I think is a Marine recon unit if memory serves, who are tasked with journeying to the Mars facility, recovering the scientists, recovering UAC property, and protecting the facility and preventing anything from escaping from there. So, it's your kind of stock military unit. We have different people with a lot of different personalities. The two main ones being the Sarge, who's the unit's leader, played by The Rock, and Reaper, played by Carl Urban, who is I don't know if he's the second in command, but he almost seems like the second in command. He's a very reliable, trustworthy soldier who has a history with this particular dig site because that is where his parents died. His parents worked as scientists there. They were killed in an accident, and his sister still works there. So he's not very keen to go back to the facility, but he does anyway. So the Marines journey there. They journey the facility. They transport themselves to Mars, and they begin to investigate what's happened. And then they find out that this isn't no routine mission. There's some serious stuff going down in this facility, and things really get out of hand from there.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
You probably could have, since I spent the first 5 minutes messing up the dates, but thank you.
Men go to Mars, shooty, rooty tooty, no demons.
Be more concise, like you.
And if you want to buy our haiku book, you can catch it on. No, not yet. One day, not yet.
One of these days.
As I was saying to you before we started recording, this film is a weird one because initially I came into this thinking, oh, this is going to be like our Alone in the Dark review or the Super Mario Brothers film where it could come in and be like, video game film bad, ha ha ha. But the more I looked into this film and the kind of influences that came from other media, especially Doom 3, because I had heard that Doom 3 was a huge departure from the previous Doom games, but I didn't realise how much of a departure it was.
Certainly, tonally, it's very different. I mean, the gameplay is kind of similar. It's a bit more slower paced than most of the other Doom games, but still, it's very much it is kind of run and gun, and you still get a veritable arsenal of weapons to mow down the legions of hell. So, in terms of that, it still pretty much kind of sticks to the Doom format. But tonally, it's very different. It much more went into the kind of horror, tension, and suspense, that kind of vibe, rather than the kind of over the top action, almost kind of a campiness that the original two games had, and Doom 2016 and Eternal kind of returned to. Doom 3 is a big departure, and as you say, being at the same time, this film clearly took a lot of inspiration from that side of Doom, which makes it kind of stand out.
Yeah, I was really surprised at that because I thought this was just going to be one of those films that decided to do its own thing, which, don't get me wrong, it does do its own thing, but it did it in a way that it wasn't lifting any inspiration. But you can definitely tell that was lifting things from Doom 3, which came out in, correct me if I'm wrong, but what was it, 2004?
Yeah, it was 2004, the year before it came out on PC, and then there was a port for the original Xbox, which might have come out in 2005. Which, a fun fact, if you bought the DVD to Doom back in the day, you could stick the disc into your Xbox and it had a demo for Doom 3.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know, like, as well, it used to have a very fun feature, which I rewatched again and had a lot of fun with, where a guy told you how to play Doom 3, which is a really fun feature that you don't really see. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before, but it was kind of fun, especially since one of his things was don't be afraid to swear. That was one of his keys to success.
I bet you had a lot of angry parents that day.
Indeed, that's why I played this at school away from parents.
See, one heck, and that's it. Taken off you for a month. All those carefree days playing Shadow the Hedgehog on mute. Anyway. Seeing as this is quite a controversial film, not in the usual sense of it's controversial for anything serious, but seeing as it's not widely received very well, will we go into the positives first? Because I feel as if that list is probably shorter than the negatives.
I do think there are some good things to this. I mean, maybe as unpopular opinion that is, I think there are some redeeming features to this.
Yeah, I'll let you kick off with it. What is one of the things, or rather, several things, that you find good with this film?
This may sound like I'm already grasping and reaching for straws here, but having watched a lot of other bad films of a much lower quality, you begin to appreciate a film that's competently shot. This film at least is that. There's none of the crazy camera angles of Birdemic or anything like that, so it's a well put together and it's a well made film, which I've begun to appreciate as I've got older. I think as well there's a decent cast to this film. You might argue it's a bit top heavy and that I think there's a lot of really great actors at the top, and then you might argue it fizzles out below that, but I still think the cast overall is decent. I mean, we have The Rock, we've got Carl Urban, Rosamund Pike, Dexter Fletcher. Though I think those are probably the main four, unless I'm blanking on anybody else, but to have those four, you're off to really good footing with your film. I wouldn't say there's any horrific acting in this film. There's obviously layers. Some people are better than others, and some people aren't great actors, I would say. But I don't think there's anybody that I'm not to be mean, but there's no Tara Reid here. There's no Tara Reid of Alone in the Dark here, or any of the cast of Birdemic here. I think everybody is at the very least semi-competent, acting. For me, the special effects are mostly okay. I think what a good thing is they seem to rely on quite a few a lot of prosthetics, things like that, rather than an over-reliance on CGI, so I think that helps. There is still some kind of bad CGI in this, but it's of its time, so I can't get too mad about that, to be honest. It doesn't really bother me. It's just a product of its time. But I think the fact that they relied quite a bit on more physical effects, I think, is good. So I think they were fine. I think the action scenes are passable in this film. There's nothing that I think is a must watch. I'm not going to tell you to run to YouTube and watch this particular scene, because there's nothing. There's no car chase in Raid 2 or anything like that in this film. But I think I think they're passable. I think they're decent. I didn't watch any. I was like, oh god, that's terrible or anything like that. So those are the kind of positives I would say. I think it does those things well, or decent enough at least. But what about yourself?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I do think that the actors are absolutely, I don't want to say fantastic. They do a good job in this film for what they're given. Although something that made me laugh is, do you want to know a fun fact about Rosamund Pike in this film?
Always.
Well, apparently she did 2 films, I think, in the same year. She did this film and she did Pride and Prejudice. Do you want to know what film she turned down?
Oh god, so of the same time?
In 2005 or round about that time.
I'm taking it's a big film.
It's a very big British film.
Oh my god, a British film? I can't think, what was it?
Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
No way! Oh my god. Wow.
Yep, she was meant to be Rita Skeeter.
Is that the journalist? Sorry.
Yeah, that's the journalist who was she didn't really have that big of a role in the film. She was there, but not a huge, massive kind of role compared to the books. But even still, to pass up being in Harry Potter, can you imagine that? Just being nah, I'll do Doom instead.
I want to fight the infected on Mars. I respect that.
Yeah.
I'll take this small indie budget film. This was not at all big.
I mean, she went back to better films wait, let me look through my list. Die Another Day, nope. I mean, she was in Gone Girl.
She's great in Gone Girl, in fairness.
Yeah, she was. Nah, she actually was. That was a great film.
She's a really good actor. I do really like Rosamund. She just seemed to have a bit of a unfortunate, association with some not great films. I say early on, I actually don't know when she began acting, so this might not be early into her career, but it's early when I first became aware of Rosamund Pike, certainly.
Yeah, because Die Another Day was like 2002, and then this is 2005, so not a great streak of films.
I just like how she did this film, and did you say Pride and Prejudice? So
Yeah.
is that Jane Austen?
Yes, as far as I know, yeah.
I like that you have Jane Austen and you do Jane Austen and John Romero in 1 year. That's a good balance there.
When are we getting the Daikatana film? That's the real question.
Okay, you go play the first level of that. I know that I've played it, but you go play the first level of that game and come back and tell me that you want to play more of it and do an episode on it.
No, I'll take your word for it. It's going to be a Chatsu shorts, that's all I'm saying.
Unfulfilled potential. There we go. We'll be charitable.
But yeah, I think that the actors are relatively serviceable in this film. Like, I don't think anybody stands out as being terrible, as you said. Like, there are one or two awkward moments. For example, and again, I don't mean to put all the blame in Rosamund Pike because she does a good job, but there's like one particular scene where one of the soldiers is like hitting his head against like is it bulletproof glass or something?
I guess it's, reinforced glass at least.
While he's doing that, she keeps screaming every time he does that. And I don't think that's her fault. I think that's just like the script said, okay, scream after every time he hits his head or something. It's a really weird choice, like, of direction there. But, you know, you've got that. There's other characters as well that's a bit iffy, but we'll get into that. But, I mean, even with The Rock, he is like cheesy and hammy and over the top. He is a ham and cheese toasty in this film, but my god, do I love it.
It's funny because they apparently wanted him originally to play the role of Reaper, Carl Urban character, but he was drawn more to the Sarge character, and I can kind of see why, because I don't think there's any like amazing characters in this film, but I think out of all of them, I think the Sarge is the most interesting, and I think there's interesting things there. I just don't think the film ever really takes advantage of it, like especially towards the end. I think we get to see a much different side to the Sarge, and this idea of like mission first and, you know, everything, and that over any kind of morality, I think is an interesting concept the film doesn't really do much with, but I can see why he was more drawn to that character.
Are you saying that his line at the very end is not one of the cinematic greats? Quite frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. This sounds like the start of a beautiful relationship. Semper Fi, motherfucker. Are you saying that's not one of the greats?
It's one of my greats. That line has always... I've not seen this film in, like I said, I've not seen this film in over a decade, but that line has always stuck with me. Semper Fi, motherfucker. Faithful to the core.
How much fun does he have with that line, though?
He does. And, like, I don't know why I just imagine that scriptwriter wrote that to be this, like, great dramatic line that is supposed to reveal, like, the inner, you know, workings of the character, and then The Rock just has just has a ton of fun with it, and, you know, just completely wrecks, and the scriptwriter's like, oh... my dreams. But I'm glad he did.
I mean, the only other actor I would say was underutilised was probably Carl Urban. I've seen him in other roles, you know, like he's been in Dread, and he literally wears a helmet throughout the entire film, but he's such a compelling character in that. Of course, he's in The Boys, he's in just so
Lord of the
many
Rings.
things. Lord of the Rings is what... Also, he is the Rohan guy. Yeah, Mer. Sorry. I'm a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. Who's your favourite character? The Rohan guy.
Mr. Rohan.
Next to Mr. Ringbearer and Kermit the Frog that follows them, you know. Yeah, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Yeah, he is a fantastic actor, and I do feel as if in some scenes he just falls into that stereotypical gruff soldier, which a lot of these characters are stereotypes, but I feel as if for him as well, because he's like the main character, because that is something interesting about the film, especially for the promotional material of this film, because if you look at the poster of Doom, it's not Carl Urban at the forefront, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is it not The Rock that's like the poster child?
Well, definitely the DVD, I'm sure he's on the front, but it's interesting because in the opening credits, it goes and The Rock, like he's the last name to appear. I don't know, because I guess obviously the first name's big as well, but then you often feel like the last name as well is the big one, but I'm just trying to see if I can find the poster now. As you say, certainly I remember the DVD, well, I mean, yeah, looking at the DVD cover, he's like right in the middle. So I imagine the poster was pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's quite a strange one, because you would think that he was the main character, and he is one of the main characters, but he's not the main character. You know, he's not well, Reaper. I nearly forgot his name because, yeah, we'll get onto that actually. But yeah, the other thing I want to point out as well that I thought was quite interesting, and I think I pointed it out to you when we were actually watching this film, but the fact that Rosamund Pike as well isn't a love interest in this one, because I'm going to throw this out early, but it's a early 2000s or mid 2000s film, you know, you could easily have this character as just the bumbling damsel or the love interest or something like that. But right off the bat, they say, I mean, technically, I think they wait till the reveal, quote unquote, but they say how she's Carl Urban's sister, Reaper. That's the name. I keep forgetting Reaper.
Just call him Carl Urban. No, you don't.
Carl Urban, yeah. Carl Reaper, yeah. So yeah, Carl Urban and Rosamund Pike are siblings in this film. And I don't know, like, it's not a massive thing. It's not the kind of twist of the century or anything, but I thought that was quite a neat touch. You know, it's something that they could have easily turned into, oh, I've got to get to Mars to save my wife or something, but nah, they went for the sister. I don't know. I just thought that was quite an interesting take on it.
It's a really good point. It's not something I'd actually considered, but like you're completely right, especially if you do compare it to, you know, other films of the time and even up to now. It would have been so easy for you to see that character being something completely different. So you're completely right in pointing that out and saying that it is something that I think that the film should be like semi-praised for in not going down that route.
Speaking of going down a particular route, will we talk about the negatives of this film?
I suppose it's probably only fair. I mean, you can't talk about the good without the bad.
You got your GoPro on.
I do indeed.
Okay, we'll be back in 14 days, and then after that...
As we plan it for 3 months.
I can't believe that scene took 14 days.
As a technical feat, I think it's really impressive. In terms of what actually came out, I'm slightly less charitable towards it, but I do think it's like a technical achievement. It's very impressive that they dedicated the time and the resources to that.
For anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, there's a particular scene in Doom where they have like a first-person shoot-'em-up scene, as if it's like, oh look, it's just like the video game. Oh boy, I'm going to get flagged for this. A bit like what the new Halo series did. And can I just say, didn't age well then. It certainly hasn't aged well now. Yeah, FPS scenes in video game films. Don't do it. This is my PSA, don't do it.
Just play the game. If that's really what if you're really wanting that first person action, then the games are available to play.
Do you know, funny enough, when I put out on Twitter that we were going to review this film and do an episode on it, I got a recommendation from a fellow podcaster who was like, oh, if you want good first person action, there's like a Korean film called, I think it's The Villainess, and I don't know whether that's one of these films that it's got like a weak plot but like amazing action, a bit like The Raid or something like that. But now I'm getting recommendations for like Korean films now out of Doom, so all because of this one scene. So yeah, this is the rabbit hole that I've led my life through. Yeah, it's a strange one. Well, will we just go on to like what we really think about this film? Get out the BFG,
nuke it from orbit. I don't know. For me, I would divide my criticisms into two kind of broad categories. One is looking at the film as an adaptation of Doom. We'll probably go into that, you know, in a lot more detail. So I'll kind of put that to one side for now. But looking at the kind of negatives of it as a film, we kind of talked about it, but the characters are so like, they're such stock characters. There's nobody really here with like a lot of depth or like is really that much of an interesting character. They all kind of fit archetypes and they never really go beyond that. So again, you can't really, you know, get engaged with these characters because they're just cardboard cutouts in many points. There's also that thing of being an elite military unit, which doesn't seem like an elite military unit because it contains people with tons of like flaws that seem, and I get people, everybody has flaws, but these people seem to have flaws that are very bad in combat situations. Not just for this film, but a lot of them always makes me laugh. But this is another point you pointed out as well. I'll let you elaborate on it, but the film does try to borrow, it seems, from a lot of other kind of action sci-fi films. I don't think it does borrows any of those things and does them anywhere near as good as the originals. There's two particular bits two particular kind of specific details I'd really like to kind of rag on this film. The one is, so there's a kind of, as I said, it takes place in an archaeological dig, this film, and they've basically, like, one of the centerpiece things they've recovered is this skeletal remain of this, which they've named Lucy, and basically, like, it's a skeletal remain of this woman and her baby. They're trying to figure out what happened to this kind of ancient civilization whose ruins they've been sort of excavating on Mars, and, you know, they find that a lot, and they're like, oh, they have a 24th chromosome, which basically made them superhuman, and it's like, oh, they'd conquered all the disease, and Rosamund Pike's character is like, we can't figure out what killed them and everything. And she's speaking to Carl Urban at this point, and she's going through, and Rosamund Pike's like, maybe old age. And then Carl Urban takes a look at like the skeletal remains of Lucy, and is like, hey, you don't try and shield your baby from old age. And we get a look at Lucy, and it's just this like screaming woman, like with her hands out, like trying to protect her baby. And I was like, I could have figured that out, that it probably wasn't old age. And she's like, no, old age, stay away from my baby, don't take us. And it's like, that makes me laugh because it's so stupid. And then the second bit is the nano walls. And so there's a big bit here where, because this is the future, we have to have some kind of crazy scientific tech. So they have these thing called nano walls that are basically, they look like a wall when you see it, but you hit a button, it turns like translucent, and you can pass through it. And one of the soldiers has a big thing being like, he doesn't do nano walls, doesn't like going through them and everything. And yeah, we kind of see why later on. But can I just say, I think nano walls are one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in a sci-fi film. I do not understand why you would need to make a nano wall. We have a thing called a glass door, and you can get reinforced glass and bulletproof glass. Why would you need a nano wall? Like, if anybody's developing nano walls right now, stop. I'll tell you right now, that is the biggest waste of money I've ever heard of. So that irritates me because I think the idea is stupid. What about you? I'd say as well, this is not really a film for animal lovers. So if you're an animal lover, maybe give this one a miss, because animals don't generally come out well in this film. But what about yourself, Satsunami? What are the negatives?
Well, can I just say, you explained your hatred of nano walls so much better than the actual character in this film that hates nano walls. This is something I was ranting to you about, but there's a guy in the particular squad who's like, I hate nano walls. And he never elaborates. It's literally that meme of walks in, says some stupid shit, leaves without elaborating. And I was like, why do you hate nano walls? And then there's a scene where I can't remember, it's like this infected, I was about to call him a zombie or a demon, God forbid. But there's a scene where he's running away from it and he jumps in and they close the nano wall. I know, it's so stupid. They close the nano wall and it freezes the thing in between the nano wall and the corridor outside, so it's frozen in place. And then the guy turns around and he goes, this is why I hate nano walls. It's like, that nano wall just saved your life, you ungrateful bitch. I genuinely, unless I've missed a scene, like any Doom 2005 enthusiast out there, if I've genuinely missed a critical piece of information there, please let me know, because
You really haven't.
Am I right in saying that he never clarifies why he hates nano walls?
No, like, I guess it's meant to be implied that, I guess, if you could get trapped in them, which also another reason why nano walls are so stupid. I know you can maybe get trapped in a door as well, but, like, there's a bit as well later on, where, sorry, I'm going back in my nano wall rant here, but there's a bit later on where they're, like, trying to close a nano wall to protect, like, stop all these, like, zombies getting through, and the nano wall breaks, and they're like, oh no, the nano wall's broken. I'm like, oh man, what could have solved this? A door that you could just close with your hands. That would have solved all these problems, but no, we're in the future. But no, you're completely right. It's one of these things, and you kind of think, like, oh, I bet he's going to go, like, I'd completely forgotten, like, what happened to this particular character, so I was like, oh, right, he's going to go through the nano wall at some point, something's going to be hiding, because he can't see properly, because your vision's all distorted, because it's not even properly translucent, the nano wall, because it's stupid. Like, I thought he's going to get killed there, and that's where we're going to find out he doesn't like nano walls. But as you say, like, his life is saved by a nano wall, so come on, dude. Gratitude.
Yeah, I don't get it. It just seems like a weird scene. But going back to something you brought up there about the characters, these characters genuinely do feel like they're just stock soldier characters out of like a 80s action film, like your Predator, your Aliens, things like that. And I don't mean that as like an insult to like Aliens, Predator, that kind of thing, but what I mean is, you know what I mean. If you watch these films and you get these stereotypes of, I'm the buff one who doesn't think situations through. Oh, look at me, I'm the religious one. Oh, look at me, I'm the pervert. Yeah, he's just a straight, literally, they get to Mars and he's like, oh, ladies, I got a strip search, and you're like, oh, why? And then when he's talking about his leave, he's like, oh, I'm going away with just me, a hotel room, a bottle of, like, I don't know, he said bourbon or some alcohol. He says, and 3 lady boys. I'm like, why are you starting a Doom film with these characters? Why? What am I supposed to feel like? Oh no, not Portman. See, he's not even one of the first characters to die off. The whole point of a character like that is make him as unlikable as possible, then kill him off. But no, he like survives to nearly the end, I think.
Yeah, he's certainly in the mid-range. Can I just say as well, I love how Dexter Fletcher's character, like Pinky, watches Portman clearly getting like attacked by a demon, by a demon or whatever. Or sorry, not an infected, and just like just laugh. And then somebody's like, "Have you seen Portman?" He's like, "No, I can't see Portman." I'm like, "Wow." I mean, I know he's not a great character, but still, come on, dude.
I did laugh at that as well. I thought that's amazing. Yeah, can we talk about Pinky, quote unquote?
Yeah, let's go for it.
In the games, Pinky is like a nickname for these like huge, bulky creatures that charge at you and you can't shoot them from the front, so you have to like dive out the way and you see like they've got a small tail and you shoot them from the back. Like, I'm honestly terrible description, but seriously, go Google it to see what I mean. But then, is it right to say that Doom 3 was the one that they tried to reinvent Pinky?
Yeah, they kind of they did change most of the enemies from the classic games, but the Pinky Demon was the one that certainly I think got the most radical revamp. It's the one that if you looked at the pictures together, I don't think you'd be able to tell that they were supposed to be the same monster, because it has the Pinky Demons of the original Doom games and then of like the 2016 and Eternal like have they're bipedal, and they're like, you know, they stand on two legs and they've got like arms, they've got a tail as you say, and then they've got like horns. The Pinky Demon of Doom 3 and this film has no horn. It looks like it almost has like the alien head from like the Alien films, and then it has a robotic wheels at the back, which makes sense in this film. We understand why, you know, once you watch the film, why it has that particular one. But I don't think it's ever explained in Doom 3 why they have that particular makeup. But yeah, it was a strange one.
Do you know what it reminds me of? Have you ever seen that picture online where it's the blobfish?
Oh god, yeah, it is that's a good comparison.
That's exactly what it is. Just look up a blobfish. I don't know if that's the scientific name, but yeah, just look it up. It's something. Pinky in this film is definitely something. But the other characters, again, they're all like very stereotypical. You've got the religious character who, and this really, you made a very good point here saying that they're not good soldiers, because you've got a religious character who is very devout, and having like a religious character isn't a new thing in these kind of films. But whenever this particular character, I think his name's Goat, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Goat.
He ends up taking the Lord's name in vain. He says, "Oh, God damn it," or something. And he says, "I've taken the Lord's name in vain." And he starts carving a cross into his arm. And it's like putting your hand up in orientation. Like, should we be sending soldiers who self-harm themselves into these like combat zones? Like, I don't mean like he's doing it out of any PTSD or anything. Like, this just seems to be a regular thing for him. He's just like, "Oh, I'm going to carve a cross in my arm." It's like, this seems like a very poor tactical team that you want rescuing you. Because I mean, you've got him, you've got the pervert, you've got I can't remember the other guy, the one who flirts with Rosamund Pike.
Oh yeah, I've actually forgotten his name. That's terrible. I know who you mean though, but what is his name?
That is honestly the bad thing about this film, because genuinely I was having like a really bad time trying to remember them, because I was remembering them for the kind of stereotypes that they came with, like, oh, the religious one, the pervert, Carl Urban. The Rock, the two other guy, the one who plays, oh, it's not a Game Boy, but you know, he plays
yeah, whatever, like something, you said pre-Game Boy type, you know.
And then you've got the other one who's like the charismatic one, who I have to admit, out of all of them, I did like him the most. Well, other than The Rock, obviously, but out of the squad, the one who's like, there's a particular scene where he's talking to Carl Urban and he's like, "Damn, how'd you let a fine piece of ass like that get away?" And then he kind of grumbles and he goes, "Oh, she's my sister." And he's like, "Ooh, no shit." It's like, Jesus Christ, it's just dripping in like mid-2000s dialogue. But I thought, okay, that got a chuckle out of me. But other than that, for a film like this, you would expect something like, and again, not every film has to be The Raid, but you know that way where you have to have like a small core cast that kind of travel through together. I feel as if they split them off far too much in this film. You know, there's like literally a scene where they try to shoot up a monkey because it's like in the rafters, and you're like, oh, okay. And then there's like another scene where they chase something down a corridor, but they lose it or something. And there's like the action music is like do 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 do, and then they shoot the guy, and it's like, oh, okay, that was it. Like very anticlimactic. But yeah, what did you think of that?
Yeah, it's that thing, like, if you want us to invest in characters and kind of keep track, you have to give us reasons to invest in these characters. And I don't think, outside of like The Rock and Carl Urban, who because they get all the screen time, they're the only ones ones that we might semi-invest in. Either you said you're going to have to build up these characters and flesh them out, or else you're going to have to do what films like Aliens and The Raid do, where you have a large kind of unit or squad going in. They basically all get killed early on, so we don't have to worry about, getting invested and keeping track of characters, because you're right, it becomes difficult to remember who's where and who's who, at points, because they are split up, and this film is very dark, and I mean that in terms of lighting. It's kind of difficult sometimes to instantly tell who characters are at glancing, like, who's with who again, and where are they in this facility, and what are they doing again? On that level, I totally get it. It fails, and they're not memorable characters, really, outside of their quirks. You said you remember Goat cutting himself, and you remember Portman for dying on the toilet and being a creep and things like that, but it said the film doesn't give you a reason to really care about the bulk of these characters, and even the ones that it tries to, you don't really care that much about, because they're just stock characters.
I decided, just as you were talking there, sorry, to look up the names of these characters. There is Duke and Destroyer, but then there's also another character that I completely forgot about called Mac.
Poor Mac.
No, I feel bad because he really doesn't get a lot to do. Like, he stays with Pinky, and then now I remember he's like tasked to protect Pinky, is he not?
Yeah.
And like kind of protect the Ark and everything. And I don't know, would you say that, see if this was like a smaller team of, I don't know, even 5 people, would you say it would have been a bit better?
I probably would have put it down to, what's the I'm trying to think of, like, I'm going to use Aliens as the reference here. How many people end up, so because obviously it's a relatively it's a bigger squad that goes in the start of the film, but then they all kind of, spoilers for Aliens here, but most of them get taken out like fairly early on, so you're left with, is it 6 altogether? I mean, but that includes people like, that includes Ripley as well, who's a well-established character, so you at the very least the audience have some built up, if they've seen the first film, have some built up attachment to her character. But I think is it like 4 soldiers maybe who survive?
Something like that. It's quite a low number.
Yeah, so I think a number like that, like 4 or 5, I think 5, you're right, would be a maximum, because this film isn't that long either, so at the end of the day, like, it's trying to also build up the story of what's happened on Mars, and like, what are these like creatures, and what were the archaeologists and UAC doing it. There's a lot of different threads with a relatively, like, was it like an hour 40 or something like that, I think, maybe the film, maybe even less, about that runtime. There's just not enough time to flesh these characters out, so if you really want to do that, you've got to make it a smaller amount. And even I think with 5, you'd still be struggling, but you'd be in a better shape to do it. I mean, it's difficult as well, because the Doom games are basically solo characters, at the end of the day, like Doom Marine, Doom Guy, Doom Slayer, whatever you want to call them, is like basically a lone protagonist throughout all, like, the majority of the games. And even in Doom 3, where it's not the Doom Marine, it's a new character, because their game was like a reboot, and I don't think it really fits into the chronology. I think some people have tried to put it into the main chronology, but let's just say, for argument, it's just a separate thing that doesn't, it was an attempted reboot that's been like, that timeline's been forgotten now. Even that character is like, he's a new Marine who arrives at the Mars facility in the game. He's on his own basically the whole game. That's what the Doom games are, so already trying to put a team, you're kind of going against what the games are.
Can I just say, see, despite looking up all those characters and saying, oh, we forgot about Duke, Destroyer, and Mac, I also forgot about another one, the kid.
The kid, yeah. The most incompetent of the squad.
But that's the thing, though, it's almost as if they want as many stereotypes in. And usually for a film like this, like, I just double-checked as well, the runtime, this is an hour 53.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if they're looking to do like a kind of Aliens, Predator kind of thing, where they want to kill them off one by one, but they take their sweet damn time with it. Let's just say they really do. You're just lying there thinking, okay, when's this character going to die? When's this character going to die? You're like, oh, here we go. It's just, it's a slog at times when they talk about the lore and this ancient civilization. And you're like, what, you mean demons from hell? Of course they're ancient. No. Infected aliens. And you're like, okay, let's go through this again and try and pretend we care about this lore. And then Carl Urban gets superpowers, whereas The Rock, as we said, Semper Fi, brother truckers, he jumps down and he's like, oh, let's fight. And you're like, okay, fair enough. If this will end the film sooner, then fair enough. But I honestly wouldn't say, though, that this film is entirely without good things. It's a film that definitely suffers both holding up, like, the name of Doom, as well as having all these like stereotypical characters, quite a poor script and things like that. But here's the question, here's the big question that you and I were discussing before. Do you think this film would have been better as just a film in its own right without the Doom name?
I think undoubtedly. Kind of agree with you. I think, as I said, I think this is like a below average serviceable action film by itself. So I'd probably give it like a 4 out of 10 or something like that if it was just on that regard. But the fact that it's tied to the Doom name really drags it down. Because honestly, if you take this film and compare it to basically most of the games in the Doom canon, like the 90s game, the 2010, the games of the 2010s, 2020s, there's nothing here. I mean, the BFG's there. Some of the monster designs are similar. Also on Mars, that's really the UAC. That's really all there is. Tonally, it's completely different to what those games are. The Doomslayer is nowhere in sight. It's just completely, so we can't really compare them. And if we're comparing it to that, then this is an absolute failure as an adaptation. However, as we said, this came out at the same time as Doom 3, and it's what this film was kind of modeled on. As an adaptation of Doom 3, it's a lot better. And personally, I think if you're going to if you're wanting to adapt one of the Doom games, I think Doom 3 is really the only one. I just don't think the early Doom games or the kind of later ones work. Mostly because I think the character of the Doomslayer is not made for film. It's made for a game. That's what that character is made for. But Doom 3 was a game that had a lot more emphasis on narrative, a lot more cutscenes, kind of fleshed out characters. So it's one that would work if you wanted to adapt it into a film. This game takes elements of it. I think it would have been better if it followed more closely to the Doom 3 storyline. There is some things there, like some of the monster designs are quite similar, as we've said. There's the weapons. They kind of get the atmosphere. One thing Doom 3 was known for was like low lighting and dark, because the flashlight was a big part of the original game. The film kind of plays on that a bit. There's a bit in the sewers where Goat's character's flashlight goes out, and that feels very much like something inspired by the game Doom 3. But even as an adaptation of Doom 3, it fails. I mean, and forgive the pun here, but the biggest sin of this is the fact that there's no mention of hell. There's no mention at all that, and you joked about it at the beginning, there's no mention that these are demons. The only time hell is mentioned is I think when Carl Urban's like, go to hell to the rock at the end. And that's a core element of every single Doom game. Even Doom 3, you went to hell, and it was clear that there was like a hell gate that was being opened and these demons were pouring through. Not to have that. I don't know why the decision was made not to do that, but it just suffers. It makes it a terrible adaptation for that. As well, like, there's the BFG, but none of the other weapons are used. None of the other weapons have any kind of relation to the Doom weapons. There's a chainsaw at one point, I guess, so you've got that at least. The armor looks completely different. They're wearing very much kind of black, sort of like stereotypical military uniforms, while the Doom armor is known for being like green, kind of more brighter colors and more bulky. The monsters, there's a couple of monsters there, like the Pinky Demon, the Imps, the zombies, there's a Hell Knight. None of them don't really act like... The Imps in the Doom games are known for like darting around and throwing fireballs. Like in this game, they're like bigger zombies that just like lunge and charge at people and try and infect them, whatever. And again, we don't get any of... There's nothing like... There's no Lost Souls, there's no Cacodemons, there's none of these other like great monsters that are in the Doom series. It just really fails as an adaptation for me. As much as it borrows some surface level elements from the kind of game series, and especially from Doom 3, and it borrows a bit of the tone of Doom 3, like it completely fails to get any of the kind of core aspects of either Doom 3 or the series. And just the fact that it has this name of Doom and it's tied to the series really brings it down. I said if I was rating it a 4 out of 10 as like a film by itself, it goes down to at least a 3, just because it's so tied to the Doom game, because it's a bad adaptation.
It's quite an interesting thing though, because this is relating to another film that we've talked about on this podcast, Starship Troopers, which apparently that started out quite similar, where it actually wasn't going to be Starship Troopers. There was going to be like, I can't even remember the name, but it was something very generic where they attacked a bug planet and there was going to be all of that. And then eventually they got the rights to Starship Troopers and they made it their own thing. And don't get me wrong, although that has its own controversies and things like that around the book and the source material, at least that kind of made something that was very impactful. It's memed upon. It's something that people remember. But with Doom, it's almost the complete opposite of that. It's like something that went right into Doom to be like, oh, we are Doom. We've got the BFG and we've got not demons, we've got the Hell. What's it called? The Hell Knight?
Yeah, it's a Hell Knight, which is like the really big one. The one that like Destroyer fights in the prison bit.
Yeah, you've got them. You've got, Pinky at a stretch, let's face it. Yeah, you've not really got many other, like, as you said, they completely completely changed it from demons to infected, and I don't know why. Did you come across a reason why they did this kind of thing, or?
I can't see a reason why. I mean, I did read something just there talking about the original script had some more of the monsters, things like the cacodemon, which is the floating monster, the big kind of floating ball that has like one eye. If you know that monster, is quite a famous one from the Doom games. It originally had the script had monsters like that, but they were cut for like budgetary and time reasons, which I can understand that. In fairness, I know some of these monsters would be more difficult to create, and they might have, with the effects of 2005, they might have ended up looking really bad. So I suppose there is that. But to ask you your first question, I don't get why, and I can't see any reason why this was changed to be. But because I'm trying to think, but 2005 had that film Constantine, which took a large part of that took place in hell, from what I recall. Or at least it was heaven and hell were big parts of that film. So it wasn't like this was like unexplored territory in 2005. We had Rosemary's Baby 30 years before. I don't get why this didn't have this, which is such a core element. It's one of the things you think of. You always think of like the legions of hell and going to hell in these Doom games, because that was such a core part of it. And not to have that, I think, is the biggest failing of this as an adaptation. I can see no reason why they did it. Maybe budgetary reasons. Maybe they thought creating hell environments would be too difficult, too expensive, not enough time. And again, I can sympathize with that, but it doesn't take away the fact that makes it fail as an adaptation.
Maybe, and this is me purely speculating here, but maybe it was to make it more palatable for audiences, perhaps. Like, selling hell to audiences that is not a horror film. But then again, as you said, Constantine came out at the exact same time, so it's like, if that film's selling and Doom is... Do you know what it reminds me of? It's like if you brought out a reboot of The Exorcist, but instead of having demons and things like that, you had like zombies.
Exactly.
It's like, oh no, my daughter's a zombie instead of being possessed, and you'd be like, well, you're kind of missing the point here.
Like, my daughter was injected with a scientific serum and now she's become a zombie. And it's like, well, no, it's not. No, that's not what The Exorcist was.
And I mean, look at my hamster, it died of old age, and you just see it like with a twisted face.
I'll open this nano wall to get to my kitchen.
There doesn't seem to be a core reason as far as I know. I mean, if anybody's listening to this episode and you know the reason, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know, because I don't want to be like, oh, this film's terrible because they didn't have the demons and things, because don't get me wrong, it's a massive failing on the creator's part that they didn't include demons and things like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not pro hell in films or anything like that, but when you have such a core concept like that, and you don't include it in your film, I don't get it. I really don't. So honestly, if you know the reason and you're listening to this, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know, because I know there are people who are fans of this film and to get some kind of enjoyment to it. So I'm not saying like, oh, people who like this film should be ashamed or anything. Absolutely not. If you enjoy this film, all power to you. But there are questionable things. I'm not going to lie. There are some moments where you're just like, why did they do this? Why did they do that? But to kind of wrap up, do you have any final thoughts, Adam?
I kind of look at this film in two ways. Like, I look at it as a film by itself, and I look at it as an adaptation. And as I said, like, looking at it as a film, I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's wholly unredeemable. There's good stuff in here, and there's stuff that I think there's stuff that's not great, but it's not terrible. That's why I said, like, I think it's just a slightly below average serviceable film. And I think I could understand people watching this and getting enjoyment, because I used to get like a level of enjoyment out of this when I was younger. It wasn't my favorite film by any stretch, but I used to enjoy, rewatching it at points and everything. So I can completely understand that. And like, I think as well, perhaps if you're not as invested or as interested in the Doom kind of game series, then it probably helps, to be honest. I think it's as I became a bigger fan of the games that I can't watch this now and not move that part, and I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's not a good adaptation. That's the thing with being a fan of something like that. But as an adaptation, it's not good. It's bad. I think it's one of the worst game adaptations purely for that respect. But if we were to compare it to a film that we looked at a while back, in Alone in the Dark, Doom, I think it's an okay film by itself. I think it's being an adaptation is what really hurts it. While with something like Alone in the Dark, I don't personally think that was a good film to begin with. But it doesn't matter if it was trying to be an adaptation of Alone in the Dark game. Take that out, it's still a bad film in my eyes. While with Doom, I think if you did strip away the Doom stuff and made it something, called it something else, kept that same plot, I think it's fine. I think it's serviceable. Like I said, not great, but I've seen a lot worse. So it's just a shame that it being an adaptation, I think, is what really, like, for me personally, what really just brings this film down and sours it.
It is a shame though, because as we established before, the film does have the star power there, and for the most part, the core circle with like Carl Urban, The Rock, Rosamund Pike. Are there any other famous actors I'm
Dexter
forgetting?
Fletcher's maybe the only other one I would, probably the only other one I would say.
They're the ones who definitely, you can tell that they bring, I don't want to say like, oh, they bring like a certain thing to elevate the film, because there's only so much you can do with a script like this. There's certain moments with Carl Urban where he'll say certain lines and you kind of look and think, why wasn't he smirking or being like, oh yeah, haha, infected people on Mars, you know? It's not the best, I will say. It's not the best, but I can see why some people enjoy this, even if it's a guilty pleasure, even if you think nobody else loves this film, but I do. I mean, that's fine. All I'll say is at least it's not a Nuve Bowl film. If it was a Nuve Bowl film, yeah, you would have an awkward talk with your parents, I would say.
Believe it or not, I don't think this is even the worst Doom film. There was another one released 2019. I've not seen it, but from what I understand, it may be worse.
See, I just learned that when I was looking up this film. I just learned that there was a second Doom film. I also learned that there was I think it was an Indian film called Doom 3, spelled DHOOM 3. And I was like, but why aren't we reviewing this film? This looks great. But no, we were stuck with The Rock and Carl Urban and Rosamund Pike. It's like, oh, great. You can see where they took the inspiration from, and it's kind of a shame. Here's one final question for you, though. Let's say they based this off like an earlier Doom game, or Doom 3 was more like Doom 2016, or more like the originals. Do you think this film would have came out better?
Honestly, no. I think it might have been worse. To me, those Doom games, I can't see how you would adapt them. The Doom Slayer, Doom Guy, whatever you want to call him, like, is one of my favorite video game characters. But like, the guy barely utters anything other than rip and tear at points. Like, he's not a fleshed out character at all. And I know that action films have done that, but even like protagonists in action films have some level of development. You can't do that with the Doomslayer because that would go against... The only thing he does is wants to kill demons, basically. That's what makes him a great character for a video game and stuff, you know, and he's one-dimensional in every way, but it works. Well, for me, it works anyway for the games. I just don't see how you translate that into a film, because then you'd have to start looking for other ways to, you know, to bring it up. And that something like Doom Eternal, which tried to kind of flesh out a lot more lore, that wasn't something that, you know, I don't think anybody's favorite part of Doom... Well, maybe it's somebody's, but generally I don't think people's favorite part of Doom Eternal is all the lore, you know, that's around that. And so you'd have to try and do that, I think, for a film, because it works as a game, but I don't see how those, especially those early games, I have no idea. Like, you get like 3 paragraphs of text, you know, that's the story throughout the whole of like Doom 1 and Doom 2. So they wouldn't work as adaptations. So I think it would be, if anything, worse. It would be like, I think it could end up being a really bad action film, and you'd have to use a lot of CGI, and we're talking 2005 standards. I think it'd be a film that aged horribly by now. So, you know, as I said, I think Doom 3 is the only game that I think you could actually make a film adaptation of, because there's a strong sort of narrative, not to say it's quality, but there's a strong narrative there with other characters as well, you know, and it's a much more, because the character in Doom 3, the main protagonist, is like a new marine and stuff, he's not the Doom Slayer. You could like flesh that character out a lot. I don't see how you do the other Doom games, honestly.
Because initially I was thinking that if fans got what they wanted with the BFG firing more than twice and actually hitting something, and, you know, no nano walls. Although, am I right in saying there was a key card scene in this film?
That's a good point. Is there a key card?
I'm pretty sure at the very beginning the guy like brings out his key card, and I thought, because that's what I want in a Doom adaptation, the key cards.
That's too easy to find, that key card as well. You need to properly like scour the level to find it.
Exactly. He was playing in baby mode, totally. Mod. If they did adapt the old games, then it might turn out a bit like what Super Mario Bros. Turned out like, you know, because at the time Super Mario Bros. Didn't have a rich and deep lore. You know, don't get me wrong, it doesn't really have a huge lore just now, but it has a bigger lore, and, you know, it has more stories than it used to. So I don't know if Doom would have suffered the same So I can see why they focus more on something like Doom 3, because, I mean, it's not officially confirmed, I don't think, but it's clear to see they took inspiration from Doom 3. Out of all the games, Doom 3 was like one of the top ones that they said, yeah, we could take Pinky from this, we could take the kind of gritty action from it.
I think that's what they showed, the kind of film producer executives, like the executives for the Universal. I think that's what they showed. They showed like some of Doom 3 as like a way to be like, would you want to like make a film based on this? As I said, like, I can see why, because it is the one with the strongest narrative in that sense, and the most like the easiest narrative to adapt into a film, while the other games to me just don't have that. They don't have that ready-made kind of narrative that you could put into a film and flesh it out a little bit.
Would you say that Doom is, and don't worry, this is the final question, but would you say this ranks as like one of the worst video game adaptations of all time?
Sadly, I think it does have to be down at the bottom. Like, you could argue, like, if we're strictly looking at it as an adaptation, because I don't think if we're looking at it as a film, I think there's a lot worse. But if we're looking at it strictly as an adaptation, it's down there with things like and I love the Super Mario Bros. Film, but it's a bad adaptation. There's no denying that. Alone in the Dark as well, obviously, is a terrible adaptation as well as a terrible film. Even films that I think aren't good, like the newer Tomb Raider films or even Prince of Persia, things like that, I think they're better adaptations at the very least. I think they're stronger in that regard. I think it's not even so much that like it doesn't include some of the weapons and the monsters. It just doesn't really get the tone that much. And I think it's a shame because part of it is it was so tied to Doom 3, which is kind of the odd one out now in the Doom canon, in that it's kind of, as much as I think people have tried to put it into the chronology, it's kind of been written out because Doom 2016 kind of took over from Doom 2 and kind of skipped Doom 3. So it's just a shame for that. But as an adaptation, it's near the bottom. It's not good.
I would agree with that. I would say that it's definitely not the worst out there. As I've said many times on the podcast, Uwe Boll films exist. You've got all of the other terrible adaptations out there of video games. We have the Super Mario Brothers film, which, as you said, although you can get some kind of enjoyment out of it, you still have that issue of it not being a good adaptation. So it's just a shame that this film, as we said before, if this film was just its own separate thing, it would have just kind of quietly died out into mediocrity or obscurity, and some people would bring it up and be like, oh, check out this funny film. But because it's attached to the Doom name, it's always going to live in infamy of what it is, because it's carrying the branding of Doom. And that is totally not like an invite for us to then move on to the Halo TV series, but I'm sure we'll talk about that one day.
Seems likely.
Jokes aside, Adam, thank you so much for enduring this film again and reviewing it with me.
No, well, thank you for reminding me of a memory from my past. As I said, it's been a long time since I'd seen this, and it was interesting to go back to. You know, it didn't hold up as well as I might have hoped, but you know what? It was interesting to go back to at least. So once again, my pleasure.
Well, if you enjoyed it, that's the main thing.
Maybe I want to go play some Doom. So at the very least, it did that. So that's a positive.
As always, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. If you want to catch more of our content, you can check us out on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and of course our Podpage website under the name Chatsunami. So just look for the red panda and we will see you there. But until then, thank you for listening. And next week we are going to be doing our 100th episode of the podcast. Adam, are you excited?
I am very excited. And once again, I can't believe we're at the big 100. So as I said, as I joked, also seriously stated a few episodes ago, I look forward to our letter from the Queen as we mark this momentous milestone. But yeah, I'm very excited.
Honestly, I would just accept a marmalade sandwich from Paddington at this point. In fact, I think I prefer that.
Certainly, yeah, I can see why.
Hopefully it doesn't get posted to us. That's all I'm saying. Because, it's either going to get eaten by a hungry mailman or it's just going to go off. So,
the disgusting sludge that comes through the letterbox. Oh god.
See, it's not even wrapped up. Those damn kids again. Their marmalade sandwiches. But as always, guys, we will see you next week for the 100th episode. But until then, stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay hydrated.